So great to welcome K Anand, the co-founder and CPO of Recogni, to the group here.
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you, Keith. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and you just got off stage. How did that go?
I think it went well.
You're being modest. So we want to talk a little bit about tokenized AI economics and the vulnerabilities and challenges in that area.
Yeah.
How are you seeing the whole reshaping in that discussion?
You know, until about maybe even early this year, the currency for AI in terms of how people get charged and how AI gets consumed was tokens. Think of it as a currency equivalent to a US dollar, right? And they would say, okay, for so many tokens, input tokens, and so many output tokens, it costs you so many cents or dollars per million tokens. Well, that was fine when the models were just simple language models where you could predict the amount of compute taken, infrastructure compute taken, was fixed. So you could say, if I give a token in here, it consumes so much compute, so much energy, and then this is the output token that came. So you could measure it. But something changed in the latter half of last year, which is that now you have these reasoning models. And these reasoning models actually spend a lot of time in their own brains, imagine, almost like us, and thinking about a problem before giving an answer. So they consume a lot more compute. And the compute went from something that's fixed to something that became variable. And so now, when you have variable consumption of compute, how do you charge somebody? And so that becomes a challenge. And so there has to be a reassessment in the industry on how tokens are a currency and maybe some change in how you think about how you can use AI, how you can charge for it, and how you can be profitable with AI.
So with agentic models, we're seeing that play out, right?
We are. So if you think about it, when you went from a language model to a chain of thought model, costs could go up by anywhere from 10x to 100x. And now on top of that, with agentic models, you overlay, let's say, some number of language LLM models or chain of thought models, and you say, okay, I'm going to do a customer service application agent, or I'm going to do a travel agent that's going to plan itinerary for travel, which means booking hotels, booking travel, picking cities, and all of those things. Now you have many models that are interacting with each other. And depending on what input you gave, you could have variable use of these models before the agent completes its work and says, hey, Keith, here's an answer. So by the time that happens, now you've added another maybe 10x of variability, increased consumption of compute. So we are in almost an exponential increase in compute with chain of thought and then agentic models. And so we have to solve the economics of that very carefully.
How's that going?
I don't know yet, right? I think
Right,
we are in a very rapidly evolving world, right? Every week some new models appear. Every week people are building new applications and new agents on top of these models with different new protocols coming from companies like Anthropic and others. But as they build them, nobody's yet figured out how to, people are making revenue in inference, but are they making profits is the question. Profitability eventually matters in all of the businesses we do. So if you think about whether it's chain of thought models or the explosion that might happen in the next 12, 18 months on agents, one has to think about, can you deliver them, serve them economically?
So where does Recogni come in terms of helping you balance out this change, this constant flux in terms of pricing or in terms of usage models?
Yeah, so we are an AI infrastructure and inference company. We're trying to build chips and systems for inference. And all of AI, consumption of AI is all inference. All of consumption of AI is inference. So if you don't fundamentally change as an infrastructure company the cost of serving tokens, or whatever the currency might be of AI, and make it less expensive from a capital acquisition point of view, and make it less expensive from, let's say, OpEx point of view, energy consumption point of view. The upper layers of either the model providers or eventually the software providers who are building applications that layer on top of models might not have economical businesses. They might not be able to sustain those businesses profitably. So fundamentally, what we are trying to do at Recogni is to change the economics of inference by building technology that has much more higher efficiency in terms of compute costs and compute power consumption.
That's
and
exciting.
you solve those fundamentally, then all the upper layers start benefiting from
Right.
it.
Do you have an example that comes to mind that you can share?
An example of a chain of thought model, or of the technology we are building, maybe.
No, chain of thought model.
So imagine you wanted to, let's just take simple examples we do as human beings.
Yes.
So if I asked you the capital of the United States, it won't take you even a nanosecond to say Washington, D.C. But if I said, hey, Keith, can you multiply 25 times 75 times 42? You're going to tell me, hey, RK, hold on a second. Maybe I'll have to think through it.
Right.
And then maybe I'll have to take a notebook, and maybe I have to run some cycles through my brain before I spit out an answer. So you spend time validating it before you give what you think is a truthful answer on that multiplication problem. You didn't think for a second whether Washington, D.C. was the truth or was incorrect. You knew the answer by fact. So that's the difference between a language model and a chain of thought model. So imagine the amount of, let's assume we were able to quantify the energy that our brains used. If you quantified the amount of time and energy you consumed in your brain before you gave an answer to the multiplication problem, you see that it's a scale challenge. You consume a lot more time, you consume a lot more energy. That analogy applies to compute in AI too.
Perfect. Last question, urgent infrastructure pivot. What are you looking for and seeing as a necessary step in terms of infrastructure for AI?
Yeah, I think there are two parts to it. In the US, we are constrained in energy, power.
Right.
And that is a major, major issue in the US, in EU, and in many, many countries. So as we build these power stations up, imagine trying to get a new nuclear power station. By the time we get it through the regulatory process, it's probably a decade. So
at least.
At least. So what we're going to do is, at least in the short term, build, and then our transmission infrastructure in the US is also aging and old. So you cannot deliver that much power. So what we have to do is to start building data centers with captive power next to it. And most likely that captive power will be gas turbine based. So once you start getting that capacity of data centers with captive power adjacent to them, then you want to use them most efficiently.
Right.
You want to be able to, if I put together a data center that is so many 100,000 square feet, maybe 100 megawatts of power, don't you want to actually have inference systems to deliver AI so that AI becomes ubiquitous in our life across all industries and all aspects of how we function? To do that, you actually have to have AI hardware and infrastructure systems that deliver more tokens per rack, consume much lower power per rack, and do it much less expensively from a capital acquisition point of view. If you don't solve for all of those simultaneously, then the momentum on AI will start get stymied. And then the use of AI and its broader, ubiquitous use, the virtuous cycle, the flywheel will get slowed down. And that's not what we want.
No.
So we are trying to build technology that will enable that.
Do not let that happen.
Thank you. I will not try. I will try not to.
I'd like to be in the position of keeping it going because I think
we aspire to build, we are technology builders, and we aspire to build technology that serves the world for better causes. So we will continue to strive to build the best technology so that the momentum on AI, the momentum on infrastructure build out in the US and other parts of the world is not held back. And then the use of AI gets more broader use, help us gain productivity and improve lives all over. So that's our goal.
Yeah, that's a great goal and exciting times ahead for Recogni. So
Thank you,
fantastic.
Keith. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, RK.
Okay, take care.